So I know we've called this project in the past the robot walk cycle, and we can still keep calling it that. But really it is any bipedal creature or bipedal organism. And so I decided I wanted to go a little bit of a different route with the 2D version of this and do a walk cycle with a pair. So I've started building my pair, and I'm not going to be too exhaustive about showing you the illustration techniques I use for this or making you sit through watching me create those. What you'll see is I have a pair body. I've also created a stem here. I've got a little stem line for blocking that and giving it a little bit of depth. I've also made some elements of an eye and a pupil here. And I can reuse parts of this. But what I did want to walk you through is some of the ways this is constructed in order to allow us to rig it more cleanly. And so I wanted to show you some techniques for creating, or for how I'm going to create the legs. So I will show you one more thing I have done here, just to give this a little bit of texture. I've also made these specks, and I'll use a mask in order to keep those specks on the pair itself, but we'll bring those back in later and talk about those a little bit more. Currently, though, I do have a right calf, a right upper leg, and a right foot drawing. And so we're going to go ahead and we're just going to be making those. So I'm going to do this. It's absolutely fine to draw these, but if I'm going to rig this, I need a little bit more precision. And what I'm really wanting to make sure works is the point in which these objects connect, right? And so I have, again, a calf, a foot, and an upper leg. And so let's start with the upper leg. But I'm going to be thinking in terms of the sockets where those legs connect, right? So the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And so let's start with the upper leg, and I'm just going to use, let me use the pair line color here. And I'm going to go back to my original pencil line thickness. I think, yeah, that looks a little thin. I'm going to end up making that a little thicker. I think 10 is too thick. I don't know, maybe not. So let's do that. So let's start here with my hip, right? And then my upper leg, I'm going to go here. And I want to make sure I'm holding shift when I create these. I want to make a perfect circle out of this. Right? So let's say this is my hip joint. And then this is my knee where it's going to connect. And then I'm going to go down here a little lower. Actually, this is probably looking a little big. And I'm going to go ahead and move that up a little bit. I can always use the same circle if I wanted to. Control-C, Control-V, and move that down to make my ankle. And I want my ankle to be a little smaller. Right now, the reason I'm doing this is because these points need to be the same across all three of these objects. Right. And what I'm really wanting to happen is that since this is a circle, right? If my pivot point is at the center of that circle, let's do rotation in here, and I am able to get my pivot point very close to the center of that circle, then when I rotate that circle, you actually don't see that circle move very much. And so I'm not perfect on that, right? But I should be able to get relatively close. Right? So if I need an extra little dot, I could use my pencil here, sort of select where that's at, and so it's right about there. Right? And I can go in here and try to get me a dot just for visualization purposes. So like right about there, I think it was a little off. Right? A little bit more like, I want to move the pivot point, I want to move the actual dot. There we go. And this is just sort of a visual tracker for me, just a little bit of a point that if I were to then put a pivot point in here, I could try to line that up and be like, I think that is the center of the dot. And of course, there's all sorts of ways we can find. We could make this dot have a center if we wanted to. But again, the point of this is that when this rotates around this circle, that center circle doesn't actually seem to change significantly, right? And so I like to just test it out and see what we're getting there. If I get in here a little closer and look at that, like that's pretty close, right? So I'm not doing anything with that yet, right? But I can use that dot with the center circle as my hip and my ankle if I would like. Let's get that Control C. Let me go ahead and Control V, put that up here, make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to do the same thing again with the ankle. Control C, Control V. Move this down here. Move this down here and make it a little smaller. And I think this will also help you kind of visualize what this leg should look like. Now I want my ankle to be significantly smaller. And I do want just a little bit, I want this knee to be just a little bit in front of the hip and the ankle. And so these three sockets now, I kind of know I can visualize where they're at, right? So just to help me with that, I'm going to copy all of these, Control C, and I want to make sure I'm happy with where they are before I do this. And then I'm going to go to my other layers. I'm just going to paste them into that on the foot and the calf as well. And then for right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn off foot and calf. And I'm just going to work on the upper leg. And on the upper leg, I only really need these two. So from here, I can actually do quite a bit of stuff, but I can start to visualize what this leg looks like. So if I do something like this and this, and then again, like, I really just need to know where the pivot point is of this point where it overlays. So I can still do some changes to this. Like if I want this to sort of bow in just a little bit here, right? So that's fine. And I can also still use stuff like my cutter tool to get rid of some of those elements. For now, I'm going to still keep these two little dots. I'm not going to worry about coloring this in just yet. But I have this now, and I can now turn on my calf, right? And I'll put on this light table, because now if I go to the calf layer, you can see what is on the calf, and you can see my upper leg is sort of grayed out, right? And I can delete this. I'm going to do that. I can use this tool, and on my calf, I'm going to go ahead and delete my hip socket, because that's really the calf is just going to be between these two, right? And then I can use this polygon line again to sort of figure out what is the line here. And again, like, actually I think I'm going to give this a little bit of a calf muscle in the back. Try that one again. It feels a little, right? Push this here, right? I'm going to do the opposite here. I'm going to do a little bit of something like this. Right? Kind of a neat little like calf bulge there now. You probably even do a little bit more work on how that works, right? Go in here with our cutter tool to trim out those sections where it connects, right? And we'll call this my calf, right? Now you may be wondering why I'm going through all this trouble, or you may already sort of see the point of this. The point of this is that once I get all this filled in, that dot overlays on the same spot on my calf and my upper leg. So if I go to my calf and I were to change my pivot point now to this point very closer to the center, when I rotate this, I'm going to get a pretty nice rotation around there. So even though it's two pieces, it's still going to feel, for the most part, like one connected piece, right? And of course, I got these lines where it's crossing over. We'll deal with those a little bit later. But that's why I took that much effort into getting this precision. And I'm honestly going to leave these unfinished, like unillustrated, until I get some of the rigging done, just so I can continue to see it in this format. If that really bothers you, that's okay. Like there's actually a solution to that. You can actually still do a drawing substitution. You can keep this as one of the drawings in your library that you are not going to use, right? And then do the finished illustration on frame number 2, and just come back to this whenever you need it as a reference, right? For my foot, I will unhide that piece, right? And the foot is interesting. I honestly don't need either of these on the foot. I really just need my foot drawing to sort of connect in with this ankle pivot, right? And so for this, I maybe can do a little bit more of a something a little bit more custom drawn. Right? Of course, I'm trying to draw this with a mouse, so it's not perfect. Right? But maybe a little bit of something like that as a starting point. I am going to the heel down, just kind of refine this a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with that. I kind of wish this were a point on there, so if I hold down Alt, I can actually put a point in there. And if I hold down on that, I think I can break this tangent by holding down Alt as well. So I can get that point a little sharper, have a little bit more control over this, right? I guess I should probably make this a little bit more flat to the ground. Just, I mean, we are going to make this character walk soon, so I want this to feel like it's hitting the ground pretty well. Just a little bit of something like that. Okay, just trying to get something kind of clean in there. And then again, whenever I'm ready with that, I can actually go in here and use the cutter tool to cut out these pieces I don't need. Maybe clean up this connecting line here just a little bit. I think we got a lot of pieces in there that aren't 100% necessary. There you have it. Yeah, I don't want to mess with the shape of that too much. And what I can do as well, since these are two different pieces, I can select those and hit this little band-aid to kind of smooth those together. Right. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm looking at this, that leg may be a touch large. It also may be that my character's eye is a little too small. So I'll do a little bit of repositioning on some of this stuff. But what I would want to make sure I'm doing is if I'm repositioning these drawings, I want to reposition all three of them together. So I'd want to do that and still kind of scale those together to make sure they stay similar. Right. All right. So now we have this leg. I could duplicate this, and I will soon. I can duplicate this so I have a whole second leg. But let's not do that just yet. Let's just recognize that I don't have to redraw all those again. I could reuse this leg.